And welcome, everyone. This is intense music, it really is. Thank you for tuning in on 92.5 WLSD to another edition of Real Talk. Now, I'm guessing, just by listening to this intro music, you probably won't be able to guess the movie that we're going to dive into tonight. So let me tell you, before we dive into that, go to all of our social media pages. That is the Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I said it out of order. The other people's show. But tonight, we're going to dive into, we're going to go back in time a little bit to the fall of 1993 when Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Dennis Leary, Jeremy Piven, and a young Stephen Dorff star in the thriller Judgement Night. And this is a movie that you all may think, I've never really heard of this movie, and a lot of people haven't. But as far as thrillers go, and they go, a dime a dozen back in the 90s. But as far as they go, this is one that you might, or maybe not, should check out. So you got to listen to the show to hear my review and my recommendation of the show, of the movie. But before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about this movie. It is about four young friends, while taking a shortcut en route to a local boxing match, witness a brutal murder which leaves them running literally for their own lives. So that's pretty much the premise of this movie. And it's a fast-paced film. And if you know the director, you may not know him by name, but you know some of his work. His name is Stephen Hopkins, and he has helmed such movies as A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child in 1989, the underrated Predator 2 starring Danny Glover in 1990, Judgement Night in 1993, the Tommy Lee Jones, I lost his name. It'll come to me in a moment. 1994, not really a heist movie, but a bomb threat movie, Blown Away. The Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas movie in 1996, The Ghost and the Darkness. And do you remember when they tried to make Lost in Space into a dark sci-fi action-adventure movie in 1998? And it was trying to turn Matt LeBlanc into a more of a serious kind of action hero movie star. He directed the 1998 version of Lost in Space. So yeah, Jeff Bridges is who I was thinking of. The Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones 1994 movie Blown Away. And so Stephen Hopkins knows his way around a thriller. He knows his way around big-time actors and actresses. Because you've got a lot of people think that The Dream Child is one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I have to be honest with you, Freddy was always one of my, I don't want to say least favorite, but as a kid, he frightened me. This is like a side note, asterisk here, but when I was younger, one of the first Freddys I saw in theaters was Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. And that one is ranked often when I'm watching and reviewing films and studying that low on the list. But that movie actually scared me, and I had night terrors of that movie. But I digress. So tonight we're talking about the thriller Judgement Night. So we have Emilio Estevez as Frank. He's a family man going out with his younger brother and his two friends to this boxing match. You've got Cuba Gooding Jr. And this is a young Cuba Gooding Jr. pre Jerry Maguire. So this was like, when you go back in the catalog of somebody's filmography and you discover a few things that they've been in. Wow, this has some pretty decent sized name actors and actresses for this time period, but it flew under the radar. And a lot of Cuba Gooding Jr.'s earlier roles, like in Lightning Jack with Paul Hogan, if you remember that. That's a Western, and Cuba Gooding Jr. is in this Western, but he doesn't speak the entire movie. And that one's called Lightning Jack, that no one's probably seen. You've got Dennis Leary, and he's a drug lord who is pursuing the four friends after they see him kill a thieving henchman. And Dennis Leary, if you remember, he was kind of one of these really motor-mouthed stand-up comics. But he was always cynical and always kind of the a-hole or the jerk, so to speak. Always really motor-mouthed, fast-talking, spewing things left and right. And he does that in this movie, but he does it to like villainous effect. You've got a young Stephen Dorff as John. He's Emilio Estevez's Frank's younger brother, and he's kind of he's invited along to go in the boxing match when his brother's friend drops out, and he's kind of a strong-willed young guy, and he doesn't really get along as much with Ray, as played by Jeremy Piven. And Jeremy is he rents an RV for the friends to take to the boxing match, and then. This is a little bit of a side note. You've got the rapper Everlast credited as Eric Schrody, and he's one of Fallon's minions. And if you don't know Everlast, I was thinking about that earlier today, that Everlast was a rapper. And I think he was in House of Pain. And House of Pain was on the soundtrack to this movie. And this movie has a very, it's sold very well, a couple million copies. And it's kind of, amalgamation of kind of like rap rock. Because there's a lot of rappers on there mixed with like, Slayer and things like this. But if you know Everlast, and he's just one of the henchmen, and you may not know him right away, but if you think back for just a moment to this song. Now, the song was in 1998, 5 years after this movie. But this was a very big song on radio. And it's Everlast, What It's Like, from Whitey Ford Sings the Blues is the album. Take a listen. So yeah, Everlast makes a little bit of an appearance in the movie Judgment Night. And he's featured in House of Pain on the album. So a few little fun facts after giving you a little bit of the cast and director's background. We've got, I just have a few that I thought were interesting. Now, Tom Cruise was originally approached to star in this movie. He turned it down, and I think he ended up filming A Few Good Men or something like that instead. A couple of other people turned it down, and Emilio Estevez was about fourth on the list. Now, his asking price was a little bit out of the budget, a little bit out of what the production had in there. But he got a $4 million payday because this point of the film, it was do or die. We either have to make this movie with someone lesser, and we're bound to lose whatever we put in, or we're not going to get anything done, and we're going to waste the money that we've already invested. So they decided to go ahead, hire him for $4 million, and the rest is history. But originally, the director said they also wanted, I forgot about this, John Travolta in the lead role and Kevin Spacey as the main villain. And that possibly, honestly, could have worked. John Travolta might have been too big of a presence and maybe would have overshadowed everyone else. A criticism that someone said to me earlier was that, some of it might have been overacted. And that could have been a possibility even with John Travolta. But he could have given a really solid performance as well, because you have to think this would probably have been, right before, I think Travolta probably, if you look at the timeline, this came out in 93, so it was probably filmed in 92, early 92, late 93, early 93, excuse me. Probably the same time Pulp Fiction was being shot. So that was probably a good decision on John's part. But I do think that everyone in this film walked away with the... if this were on my resume, I wouldn't be ashamed. I gotta be honest. I would show people, hey, I made this. I got together with this cast and we put together this. We did the best job that we could under the circumstances, and this is the product we've come up with. I would be actually proud to show this film. So it's budgeted, and I was kind of surprised to learn this, at $21 million. Now there's not any big explosions, but there's a lot of thrilling moments, and it starts off rather quick. I think about minute 8 to 9, they're already encountering the thug who they think has been shot. But little do they know, he's a thieving scumbag, and he's been shot by somebody even worse. So they accidentally, inadvertently, hit the guy with the RV, and that's how this mess unfolds. And this mess does unfold in kind of the deepest, darkest bowels of the city. And I'm guessing it's Chicago. I don't know if it's ever said, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to think back. But yeah, I don't think it's said. This only made about $12.5 million. Now, unlike another movie of this time, True Romance, which had a similar kind of release, and maybe 1993 just wasn't the time for this type of movie, because typically the fall, I do believe that the fall holds the best movies in cinema. The only thing you're not really going to find is, you might get a standout comedy every now and again, but over probably the last 5 or 6 years, is there a brand new comedy out that's been worth really watching? That's not really like a romantic comedy, like a flat out comedy. Not really. Leave a message in the comments section if you have one. But yeah, this has a Rotten Tomatoes score, a very low 38%. And when I give all these Rotten Tomatoes scores, a lot of these films, Rotten Tomatoes wasn't around when this came out. But reviewers have went back, reviewed this, now they're on there. So 38%, relatively low. Not the lowest that we've done on the film though, on the show. And the audience had a 54% positive score. IMDb a little above average at 6.6. So, like I said, I gave you the basic plot and the story. The four friends, they're trying to take a shortcut en route to a boxing match. There's like a long line of traffic. They're going to miss the fight. Ray, he's like, all right, let's go this way. We can just go this way. I know a shortcut. We can just bypass this traffic. And then they hit this guy. Boom! They knock and they hit this guy. They think they're the ones that actually hurt him originally. Then, after they bring him in to the RV, they realize, no, he has been, I think it's shot. And that gets them entangled in Fallon, played by Dennis Leary, that gets them entangled in the mess with him. He sees them as these are guys that see me off their friend, or not their friend, but this guy, because they see him kill him. So now, can't leave any witnesses. Let's take him out. So Everlast as Rhodes, he's one of the Fallon's minions, and a few other henchmen and minions kind of chase these four friends through the back streets in the underbelly of Chicago. So that's the basic plot. So you've got these four yuppies, basically. All they want to do is get away from their lives, reunite. They're friends from the past. Frank, he's getting away from his wife. There's a little scene at the beginning, and it sets up that that they've overcome some problems, Frank and his wife. And, she's recently given birth over the last couple months. And, she's not really keen on him going out with this group of guys. So your cliched female character like that. But Frank does cherish and does love this woman. And does love his newborn child. Do you still call a newborn after 3 months, I guess? Anyway, like a 3-4 month old child. Maybe 5-6 year old. I can't remember. No, I'm just kidding. It's only 3 to 4 months old. So that puts right there that he has, he has something that the others don't really have. Their backstory is kind of just spoke about briefly. But you see Frank, what he has. He lives on this nice suburban street. Nothing over the top, but nothing that you wouldn't see just, driving in a nice little quiet, quaint neighborhood. Music's not really suiting what I'm talking about. Anyway, sorry about that. So, it sets up the stakes for if there's anything for Frank to lose. If they're just setting that up right off the bat. Actually, it's set up in Swoops the camera as Ray is pulling in and their friends are gathering to go on the journey to the fight. So it doesn't really let off. It starts into the plot immediately. And it's a very cool thing that it does that, because immediately you get the camaraderie that these friends do or don't have. You get the sense that a couple of them are really close, but there's been maybe a rift or a problem, or maybe others think that maybe Ray thinks Frank has went soft now that he's married, now that he has a little kid, a little child. John, which is Frank's brother, played by Stephen Dorff, he's kind of a hothead a little bit, and it seems maybe he has got them as a group collectively in trouble or some risky things in the past. It's alluded to that. It's nothing specifically said, but it doesn't need to be. Why rehash that? You're telling this story. This is not. You don't need a flashback. 1 or 2 minute dialogue about it's sufficient. Like I said, we've got the characters. We'll go over those once again really quick. We got Emilio Estevez as Frank. And if you think about Emilio Estevez at this point, this was in 1993, and he was trying to shed away a little, of this Breakfast Club image. I don't think the Mighty Ducks had come out yet, but he had done those Young Gun movies. So he was trying to branch out and just, shed the skin of, the Breakfast Club and things like that. And I don't think he was ever really in a position where they were trying to make him an action star, because in a lot of thrillers like this, you need the quote everyman, the every woman. You don't need a superhero. You don't need, Angelina Jolie out here as Tomb Raider. I have quotes, kicking someone's butt, because that's what she's expected to do. You need someone more mild or meek. Maybe like a 90s Meg Ryan or Nicole Kidman or someone like that. And that's what they were doing with Emilio. But like we said, he wasn't the first choice. He was probably about the fourth. But I thought I think he does a good job. Cuba Gooding Jr., he was coming off of, he had Boys in the Hood. That's when I first came to know about him. I was watching it at the house beside of where my mother lives now during a terrible rainstorm. Like a rainstorm that I wouldn't have been surprised if rain would have been just started pouring down throughout the ceiling. That wouldn't have surprised me. And then lightning hit this tree across the road, really close. The tree went across the road, and like the fire trucks and whoever the tree people came, and they had to move it out, all while watching Boys in the Hood. The first and the only time that I've seen it on VHS from Video Depot. Two. But Cuba Gooding Jr. was in that, and like I said earlier, Lightning Jack. So he wasn't really an established. He was also in a movie called Gladiator, and not the Russell Crowe Gladiator. But it's like this boxing movie called Gladiator, and that's a movie. That's a movie that I also saw on VHS in the back of a van driving to Cincinnati to a Cincinnati Bengals game. But it was one of those cool vans that had like a Nintendo in it, a small little, probably 8-inch TV, and this one had a VHS player. Yes. So we watched Gladiator, and that was one of the movies we watched. And Cuba Gooding Jr. is in that. And Dennis Leary was coming off of, he had done some specials. He was doing the comedy thing. I think he did some stuff with MTV. But he was also trying to make the transition into more, adult fare, which he later did with the FX firefighter show. But he had done The Ref, but that was with Kevin Spacey. But that came out a year after this. So he had done like 3 little movies. He had done a small little part in Demolition Man, if you remember the Stallone movie with Sandra Bullock in it, Benjamin Bratt, Rob Schneider. So that had a lot of people in it. But Dennis Leary was not only trying to do comedy, but he was trying to branch out and do other things. Although if you've seen his comedic stylings and delivery, his dialogue delivery and the characters that he plays are very similar to that, just in more of a dramatic setting around them. If you call it Demolition Man dramatic. Utopia, fantastical, yes. Dramatic parts. But fun, nonetheless. Favorite scene, least favorite scene. I gotta say, there is a couple different scenes. I like the way this movie is structured. I can't say that there is a weak scene per se. And I can't say that any one scene specifically stands out. I can reference a couple, which would be when they're trying to get, as the chase is pursuing, the friends are trying to get from one building to the other. And the way they're getting to the building is they have to climb across a ladder that is over top of another. So that's a pretty dramatic scene. Spoiler alert, you lose one of the friends. But going in, you know there's 4 friends. You know at least 1 or 2 are going down. That's a given. That is a pure given. And I don't have a least favorite scene. I can't say that I do. Score and the music, I mean, take a listen for yourself. Well, just as I said, take a listen for yourself. That was the end of that piece of music. Try this one on for size. I mean, I think it goes with the genre because it goes with also a lot of things. You know, a lot of people don't want to throw thrillers in the horror genre, and they're not per se, but they share a lot of the same elements. The build-up. You've got some of the jump scares. You just don't have a lot of the gore, or maybe as many killings. And maybe in thrillers, it's more about the chase. And then the kill at the end is the build-up. So yeah, I do think this has a good score. And, you know, originality, I always like to tack that in there. You know, I don't know. I didn't catch those woodwind instruments. Yeah. But yeah, I would say that the movie is not one of the most original movies that I've seen. And like all good movies that I think, it doesn't have to be that the idea itself is all that original. It's the way that that idea is told. The way in which it's told. You know, because if you break down a superhero movie, for the most part, each one basically at the basic level is about the same thing. But the characters you layer it with, and the world building, and the setting, and the plot, and the structure, and the way it weaves together, the music, the score, the actors and actresses you get to inhabit these characters that you hopefully you'll give fresh, crisp dialogue. And hopefully the score will be like a bed that covers over you and comforts you just slightly. Just slightly. And you might not even know it's there to begin with. Maybe it gives you this feeling. And that's what the score is supposed to do. Now, this does have a very well-liked, and like I said, platinum-selling album. It's the Judgement Night album motion picture soundtrack. I think it sold 1 or 2 million copies. And it's got a lot of heavy hitters on there, even people that you would know today. Run DMC's on there, Slayer was on there. You got House of Pain. I mean, I could easily just pull it up here. The poster, I do not like the poster for this movie. none of the posters that I've even found don't even look good at all. I mean, not one of them. Not one of them sell the movie. I'm not telling you that I would even have a better poster in mind, but it's definitely not the one we have. And I think that was one of the reasons that they, I don't know if I ever remember seeing this marketed. I vaguely think I do. I did see this movie in theaters. This album peaked at number 17 on the Billboard Top 200. It had De La Soul, Teenage Fan Club, Faith No More, Helmet, House of Pain. It had a lot of, rap, rock, alternative metal. Cypress Hill, Mudhoney, Pearl Jam, Run DMC, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Sonic Youth, Therapy, and so on and so forth. So, would I recommend Judgment Night? I would have to say yes. It is free. I think it's on like Tubi, Freevee. It's free in a couple different ones, 2 or 3 different streaming services. I think it's a brisk, like 96, 93 minutes or so. I thought everyone did a good job. I mean, you've got to understand, this movie is what now, 31 years old? So this was an early on movie for a lot of these actors in this film. Some really took off, some didn't. But I think they all gave a valiant effort, and they all brought some depth to their characters. And this movie does have the thrills. It's pretty much a constant chase throughout, a cat and mouse, so to speak. And spoiler alert, Frank ends up victorious in a showdown. And kind of like showdowns we don't really get anymore, but we got a lot of those in the 90s. Even in the 2000s, you got some as well. But not really much anymore, which is a shame. But I would recommend Judgment Night. Like I said, it is on Freevee, Tubi. It's on a couple different free ones. So, yeah, if you want something to dive into, please do. Please do. And then leave a review on one of our many, many social media pages, like the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, The Other People Show. Thank you for tuning in tonight on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault. And tune into all the great programming. There's a lot of good stuff on here. And on the sister station, 93.5 WAXM. Stay tuned for in just a few moments for another edition of The Other People Show. Have a good night.